Life after 80 is often described in soft tones, as though a gentle sunset filled with peace, wisdom, and calm mornings. But anyone who has truly crossed into that decade knows the reality is more complex. Aging at this stage isn't simply about watching the years roll by with grace. It's about facing a new set of challenges, both visible and invisible, that test your body, your mind, and your heart in ways no one ever warned you about. It can feel less like living freely and more like surviving with intention. The strength you once carried so naturally begins to shift. Your independence grows fragile, and even your social world changes in ways that are hard to describe unless you're living them yourself. For many, this stage comes with an unspoken truth. The circle of people around you starts to shrink. By the time you reach 80, the phone rings less often. The friends who once filled your afternoons with stories and laughter are no longer there, either because they pass away or because life has pulled them into different directions. Neighbors you saw every morning slowly disappear. Some move into assisted living. Others simply fade into absence. Even family becomes less available as their own lives fill with responsibilities, grandchildren, work, and health struggles of their own. It isn't just about losing people to death. It's about absence itself. The Tuesday lunches you once shared, the Sunday calls after church, the little routines of connection vanish one by one. Younger people may care, but they don't fill the same space in your heart. And what many don't realize is that this shrinking social circle does more than change your calendar. It touches your very sense of self. Loneliness isn't just being alone in a room. It's the feeling of invisibility, of realizing that fewer and fewer people remember your story, your prime years, or even check to see how you are doing. That can erode your sense of purpose in ways that are difficult to talk about. But the story doesn't end there. Even in this stage, new seeds can be planted. Some seniors discover unexpected joy in small but consistent interactions. It may be chatting with a cashier at the store, joining a book group at the library, or volunteering just enough to stay engaged with others. The goal isn't to replace what's gone. You can never rebuild the same circle. But to prevent yourself from drifting into silence. Just one new connection, even late in life, can act as a lifeline. The truth is that while much has been lost, your story is still unfolding, and someone, somewhere, needs to hear it. As the social world shifts, another reality takes hold. Your body begins a quiet rebellion. After 80, physical change is no longer a slow, predictable slope. It becomes inconsistent and surprising. One day, you walk with ease. The next day, your knees ache so much that climbing a few steps feels impossible. Sleep is steady for a few nights. Then suddenly you're staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m. Foods you've eaten your entire life suddenly don't sit well. Your digestion, your energy, even your appetite begin to play by new rules you didn't agree to. This unpredictability can be exhausting, not only physically but emotionally. Younger people may look at you and assume you're fine. You're still moving, still cracking jokes, still doing chores. But they don't see the hidden energy it takes just to keep up the appearance of normalcy. They don't realize how carefully you plan your days around your good hours, how you skip certain meals to avoid discomfort, or how you sit down not out of laziness, but because your legs tremble if you stand too long. It is not weakness. It is the body negotiating with time. What makes it harder is the uncertainty. Is this pain permanent or temporary? Should you call a doctor or just wait it out? The constant guessing game erodes confidence. And yet, resilience at this stage comes not from fighting these changes, but from learning to adapt. Simple routines, a glass of warm water in the morning, a short walk in the sun, gentle stretches before bed, become anchors. They remind the body that it is still being cared for, still respected, still capable of serving you if you meet it halfway. The quiet strength of aging, isn't about resistance, but about adjusting with grace. Alongside the body's rebellion comes another shift that's harder to admit. The gradual shrinking of personal freedom. Independence, once taken for granted, begins to feel fragile. You may still be sharp and capable, but the world around you starts treating you as though you're not. Loved ones insist on driving you everywhere, questioning what you eat, how you take your medications, even what time you go to bed. Their intentions are kind, rooted in concern, but the effect can feel suffocating. Choices that once belonged to you alone are suddenly up for negotiation. One woman in her mid-80s described how her daughter began planning every aspect of her day, what she watched, when she walked, even what she ate. Though it was done with love, it left her feeling erased, as if her independence was slowly being taken piece by piece. At this stage, it's not about being stubborn. It's about dignity, being asked, not told, having your choices respected, no matter how small. Because the truth is, freedom isn't just about mobility, it's about identity. And identity doesn't expire at 80 or 90 or even 100. The key is boundaries. Setting them with kindness and firmness ensures that your independence, as much as possible, remains intact. Saying, "I appreciate your help, but I'd like to handle this myself," is not selfish, it's necessary. Protecting your ability to decide for yourself keeps you connected to life in a way that no amount of caretaking can replace. But independence isn't the only weight carried at this stage. Perhaps the heaviest burden of all is outliving others. The longer you live, the more goodbyes you're forced to say. Friends, siblings, even spouses, the people who once shared your world begin to leave it. And suddenly, you find yourself the sole keeper of memories no one else recalls. You are the last one who remembers the jokes from your youth, the moment of triumph or heartbreak from decades ago. The stage of life that once held a full cast of characters now feels emptier, and you are left to carry the history alone. This loneliness is unlike any other. It isn't just about having no one to talk to. It's about realizing that the people who knew the deepest parts of your story are no longer there to nod, to laugh, to remember with you. Sometimes, guilt even seeps in, the question of why you're still here when others are not. This is called survivor's guilt, and it can weigh just as heavily as grief itself. Yet, within that grief lies a kind of strength, the strength of being the one who remembers, the one who carries forward the stories, the laughter, the legacy of those who are gone. Choosing to share their memory, to tell their stories to others, becomes a quiet act of courage. Even in the silence of loss, life continues to ask you to show up, to open the blinds, to brew the coffee, to step outside and live another day. Aging after 80, then, is not just a matter of surviving. It is a test of how you adapt, how you carry the invisible burdens with dignity, and how you continue to find meaning in a world that feels both smaller and heavier. It is about discovering a new kind of strength, one that is softer, slower, but no less powerful. As the years stretch beyond 80, something subtle but powerful begins to happen. The world doesn't just change around you, it changes its relationship with you. People who once leaned on you for guidance, for support, for strength, now approach you with caution. Their concern, though rooted in love, can sometimes feel like quiet doubt in your ability to make choices for yourself. The shift is small at first, someone offering to carry your bag, another suggesting you shouldn't drive after dark. But over time it adds up. Suddenly, you find yourself in conversations where your opinion isn't the final say anymore, where others gently take control of decisions that used to belong only to you. This loss of personal freedom is one of the more invisible challenges of old age. It isn't dramatic or loud, but it eats away at you slowly, as if each small adjustment is a reminder that the world no longer trusts your judgment the way it once did. It can be deeply frustrating, not because you refuse help, but because help feels different when it is assumed instead of asked for. Independence isn't just about walking on your own or cooking your meals. It's about dignity, about the right to say yes or no, about being treated as a whole person who still knows who they are and what matters to them. One woman in her 80s once said that she felt like her identity was being edited out of her own story. Her children loved her, cared for her, wanted the best for her, but in doing so, they stopped asking what she wanted. Every day was carefully planned and managed for her, leaving little room for her own choices. She described it as being loved into a corner. That corner, for many older adults, is suffocating. What helps in moments like these is the courage to set gentle but firm boundaries. Saying, "Thank you, but I'll decide this one myself," is not an act of rebellion. It's a preservation of self. It reminds the people around you that you're not only alive, but still living, still thinking, still capable of choosing. It may take patience for others to adjust, but it's worth holding your ground. Your freedom, however small it may seem to others, is a thread that connects you to your sense of purpose. Alongside the struggle for independence lies another truth: the emotional cost of outliving the people who mattered most. It's one thing to lose a friend or a sibling here and there. It's another when loss becomes a steady rhythm of life. Funerals, once rare occasions, become familiar gatherings. Birthdays are no longer celebrated with the same laughter because the people who shared those memories are gone. The weight of grief changes its form. In youth, grief comes in waves, sharp, overwhelming, and consuming. In later years, it settles in the background like a constant hum, a quiet ache that never fully leaves. Many older adults describe this as the hardest part of aging, more painful than aching knees or fragile bones. It's the realization that the world you built your life around no longer exists in the same way. The people who understood your stories from the inside, who laughed at your private jokes, who knew the meaning of small details in your life, they are no longer there to nod in recognition. You become the sole custodian of a history no one else remembers. This kind of loneliness is complex. It isn't about not having people around. Sometimes your children, grandchildren, or even neighbors visit often. The loneliness lies in the absence of those who shared your original chapters. When you recall a memory from your 20s, there is no one left who lived it with you. When you hear a song that once belonged to you and your spouse, the silence beside you feels heavier than the music itself. Some carry not only grief, but guilt. Survivor's guilt isn't often discussed in old age, but it is real. You may ask yourself, why am I still here when so many I loved are not? You may replay conversations you never had, phone calls you didn't make, things you wish you'd said when you had the chance. This weight doesn't disappear. It reshapes itself into part of your daily existence. And yet, there is strength in carrying these memories forward. To be the one who remembers is not a curse, but a responsibility, a way of honoring those who are gone, sharing their stories with others, even with people much younger who may not fully understand, keeps their lives alive through your words. A man once said that he felt his late wife's presence most strongly not in silence, but in the moments he told her stories to his grandchildren, watching her live on in their laughter. Grief doesn't vanish, but it doesn't have to stop you either. It can walk beside you as a companion, heavy but bearable, if you allow space for new moments to exist alongside it. Staying open to new relationships, even those that may never match the depth of the old ones, is a form of courage. Sometimes the person who fills a gap in your life isn't your age at all. It might be a younger neighbor who enjoys your stories, or a grandchild who looks at you with admiration, or even someone you meet at a community center who shares just one small interest. These bonds may not replace what was lost, but they give you new reasons to smile, new memories to hold. Beyond emotional burdens, there is also the humbling awareness of fragility. After 80, everyday activities begin to reveal limits you never noticed before. Standing up from a low chair, tying your shoes, carrying a cup without spilling. These simple acts become reminders that time has touched you in ways you cannot ignore. Each stumble, each moment of unsteadiness whispers that the body has boundaries now. It isn't weakness, but it does challenge confidence. Some people react by hiding their fragility, pretending they are stronger than they are, refusing help even when it is needed. But that path often leads to more isolation and more danger. Others take a different approach. They adapt with grace. They accept the cane not as a symbol of defeat, but as proof that they are still moving forward. They adjust their routines, ask for help when necessary, and use tools to make life easier. And in that acceptance, they often maintain their independence longer than those who resist. One woman in her 80s said that her cane was like a badge of honor. It reminded her that she had walked a long, meaningful road and was still going. That attitude captures the essence of aging with strength. Fragility doesn't erase who you are. It simply asks you to carry yourself differently, with patience, caution, and respect for the journey your body has made. In the end, what defines life after 80 isn't the absence of challenges, but the way you face them. Loneliness, grief, physical weakness, and the shrinking of independence are real. They shape your days and test your spirit. But they also invite a deeper kind of wisdom, the kind that knows strength isn't in denying change, but in adapting with dignity. To live well in this stage isn't about pretending life hasn't changed. It's about choosing how you carry those changes, how you protect your voice, and how you continue to find moments of connection and joy even in a quieter world. Reaching your 80s and beyond doesn't just change your days, it changes the way you see yourself. The truth is, fragility, loss, and shrinking independence don't just happen to your body or your schedule. They reach into your identity. You begin to measure time differently. You no longer think in decades or even years. Instead, you focus on days, on mornings when you wake up with energy, on evenings when you sit quietly and feel at peace. Life stops being about how much you can achieve and starts being about how you choose to spend the energy you have. This shift isn't something people talk about often, but it carries a deep wisdom. When you're younger, you chase goals, ambitions, and milestones. But after 80, you begin to realize that the most valuable currency isn't money or possessions. It's energy, presence, and peace of mind. A walk in the sun, a quiet cup of tea, or a conversation with someone who truly listens becomes richer than any achievement you once chased. This doesn't mean your world has shrunk in meaning. It means you've learned how to filter it, how to hold on only to what matters. Yet alongside this clarity, there's another unspoken struggle, the fear of becoming a burden. Many older adults feel it quietly. Even when family visits, even when help is offered lovingly, a voice in the back of the mind whispers, "Am I too much? Do I take up too much space, too much time, too many resources?" This fear can make you hesitate to ask for what you truly need. It can push you into silence, into pretending you're fine even when you're not. But here's the truth most elders forget. You are not a burden simply because you need care. Needing help doesn't erase a lifetime of giving. You've carried others, raised children, supported families, contributed to communities. Receiving care now is not a debt. It is part of the cycle of life. In fact, when you allow others to help you, you give them a gift, the chance to love you actively, to show their gratitude, to honor the years you gave them. Allowing others to give is, in its own way, a form of generosity. Another challenge that often rises after 80 is silence. Not just the silence of an empty house, but the silence of unspoken emotions. Many people in this stage of life stop talking about their struggles because they don't want to worry anyone. They swallow their sadness, their fears, their frustrations. But silence builds walls, and those walls can make you feel more alone than the absence of people ever could. The truth is, your feelings are still valid, still human, still important. Speaking them aloud doesn't make you weak. It makes you alive. Even in these later years, connection is still possible through honesty. When you tell a family member, "I feel lonely," or "I miss my friends," you aren't complaining. You're inviting closeness. When you share your fears about health or memory, you're giving someone a chance to walk beside you in it. Vulnerability may feel harder with age, but it remains one of the strongest bridges between people. There's also the matter of curiosity. One of the quiet tragedies of old age is how quickly curiosity can fade. The world begins to feel smaller, routines narrower, opportunities fewer. But staying curious is one of the most powerful tools you have to keep your spirit alive. Curiosity isn't about traveling the world or learning complicated skills. It's about continuing to ask questions, to seek joy in small discoveries. It might be learning a new card game, exploring a local park, reading about a subject you never had time for before, or simply asking younger people about their lives and really listening. Curiosity reminds you that the world hasn't closed its doors. Even when your body slows down, your mind can still expand. And when your mind stays open, life continues to feel fresh instead of stale. Some of the happiest elders are not those who avoided hardship, but those who kept finding reasons to be amazed, even by small things. The shape of cloud, a neighbor's laughter, the warmth of sunlight through a window. Money, too, becomes a quiet subject in later years. Many worry about whether they will have enough, whether medical bills or daily expenses will eat into their independence. Finances after 80 aren't just about numbers. They're about security and peace of mind. But here is something important to remember. Generosity isn't tied to wealth. Even with little, you can still give, not just money, but time, stories, wisdom, encouragement. In fact, these gifts often outlast material ones. A kind word to a neighbor, a story shared with grandchild, a letter written to an old friend. These are forms of generosity that keep your spirit expansive, no matter your bank balance. And perhaps most importantly, aging at this stage demands kindness, not just to others, but to yourself. Too often, elders judge themselves harshly. They compare who they are now to who they were decades ago, measuring today's abilities against yesterday's strength. But this comparison is unfair because it ignores the road you've traveled. Every wrinkle, every scar, every limitation carries a story of survival. Being kind to yourself means recognizing that you've earned the right to slow down, to rest, to accept help, and still hold your head high. What truly matters after 80 isn't proving you can do everything alone. It's choosing what matters most and pouring your energy into it. Maybe that's spending time with family. Maybe it's writing down your memories. Maybe it's tending to a small garden, or simply sitting on the porch watching the world go by. These are not small acts. They are ways of staying present, of claiming joy in the midst of change. In the end, life after 80 is both harder and softer than people imagine. Harder, because the challenges are real: loneliness, fragility, loss, and the slow erosion of independence. Softer, because it strips life down to its essence: connection, presence, dignity, and choice. You don't have to pretend it's easy. You don't have to hide your grief or your fears. What makes this stage powerful is the honesty with which you face it, the grace with which you adapt, and the courage with which you continue to live. You are not invisible. You are not irrelevant. Your presence still matters, perhaps more now than ever. Every story you tell, every smile you give, every bit of wisdom you share is part of a legacy that will ripple long after you're gone. You've walked far, endured much, and carried life in ways only you could. And even as the world grows quieter around you, remember, your story is still unfolding, and it deserves to be lived fully with dignity, strength, and an open heart.